Good morning, reptile entrepreneurs. This is your host, Bill Strand. Today, we're going to be talking about starting a business breeding reptiles or amphibians. And that's a dream that many of us have. We love these animals so much, and we would love to spend our life with them as a profession. One challenge many of us face is that we're not working with the animal because it is commercially viable. We're working with it because we love it. And when we start thinking about doing a business 3, 4, 5 years down the line, we find ourselves an expert into something that's a low price tag item. The question is, how do you turn that into a business? That's entirely relevant to this interview because I'm talking to Alex Menke of Frog Daddy, who specializes in dart frogs, and these are low price tag items. And so come along with me in this interview as I ask him how he went from a hobbyist to a business owner, and what kind of structure he had to put in place to make it a successful business. Please join me in welcoming Alex Menke to the Reptile Entrepreneur Podcast. Hello, reptile entrepreneurs. We're back for another show, and today I have on Alex Menke, who is Frog Daddy. And for those who aren't in the dart frog world, well, you're about to learn about him and Frog Daddy. Alex, thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me. It's an honor.
Alex, could you give us an introduction as to what is Frog Daddy?
Yeah, so we are a vivarium supply company, and we basically sell poison dart frogs, other frogs, rare plants, dry goods, and natural resources. We're basically an exotic pet shop, but our main focus is on the poison dart frogs.
Okay. And with those breeding efforts, how much of your decision to breed poison dart frogs was because that is what you loved, and how much of it was because you decided that that was a market that was it was a good market?
So I think we really started off in terms of breeding poison dart frogs. I really started off as a hobbyist, just like most owners. We have like our kind of our bread and butter, and that's what I started with. So it didn't start off as a business. It started off as a hobby. So as my collection grew, it grew and grew and grew. We kind of realized that, okay, we have 100 and something tanks. We have like 50, 60 proven breeders, probably moving toward launching a business. Because at that point, you really do move from the hobbyist to a business, because you are selling these things most of the time. And if you keep skating by and selling all this stuff, the IRS will eventually catch on. So you don't really have much of a choice. But to get back to your question, I really do think it was because I wanted to. I was very interested in poison dart frogs. They are low ticket items, so to speak, most of them. And so I really do breed them for the love of the animal.
Okay, well, this is a topic that will be of interest to many people out there, because a lot of us, well, most of us, we love the reptiles, and we love a certain type of reptile independent of how much it costs. Yes. And when we get to the point where we're starting to think about going into a business, all of a sudden how much it costs is a very important part of whether the business will survive or not. And the cost to raise the animal versus what you can sell it for is very important. And so I'm very interested in exploring how it works with something that's a relatively low ticket item like dart frogs. How does that work as far as making it a business?
I would say that it was difficult. When I moved, most of the time I would assume, and this is an assumption, that a lot of the people that do breeding have other jobs. So I was still teaching at Queens. I was moving to smaller and smaller course loads over time. And so my supplemental income was from the frogs, whereas my job was paying the bills. So eventually when we got to about 72, I think the 72 number was where we were, 72 enclosures. That's when I started to move completely to part-time. And then at 130 enclosures, I was still in my apartment. That's when I moved to full-time. And we got a facility. That transition from having no money coming in through, just having money come in through dart frogs, that was definitely a wake-up call. That was difficult.
Okay.
Once you're paying your bills with that money, then that's tough. But it was doable because of the supplemental items that go with the dart frog. And I think this applies to a lot of the animals. Some breeders only breed the animals. I do, since dart frogs have the naturalistic vivariums, naturalistic terrariums, there's all the plants, the soil, the leaf litter. So I started my business based on leaves. I sold leaves to some of the biggest companies in the United States, wholesale. Selling my leaves to them allowed me to use some of that money to broaden my collection, work on my website, get product labels, that kind of thing. So I think saying that it was just the animals was not exactly, that's not exactly true. It wasn't just dart frogs that supported me. It was everything that went with them. That also was a supplement.
And we see this in many businesses where they start out breeding, but they end up having a great amount of their goods, or a great amount of their sales in dry goods. But I do want to ask, so it sounds great. You have your frogs, but you have your dry goods and your leaves and all of that. But how did you make it work? That's a lot to take on for one person trying to hold it all together and run a business. How was it at that time?
So at that time, when I had about 130 enclosures and I was moving into the facility, that was December of 2019 where we signed our lease for that place. And we started moving in actually during 2020. So this is relatively new.
Yeah.
I was very lucky to have a quote unquote business partner, William Newell. And between the two of us, we were able to tackle that massive project. We had over 200 enclosures when we combined our collection. There was massive amounts of spending. We drew loans from personal loans. We drew business loans, friend loans. It was hard. And a lot of it was just work. It was 100 hours a week, every week, day in, day out, 7 days a week on Sundays. I mean, I still work Sundays most of the time. Girlfriend doesn't love that, but we see that in the industry where you own your own business. This is your life. So you really dedicate your life to it if you want it to be successful. That's how we made it work. It was just the grind, caring for the animals, consistent website development, consistent customer contact, staying on top of things. Once it's your baby, you don't let it slip. So there's really no magic sauce, surefire way to do this. It's hard work and it's your passion. So that does help.
Now, you made an interesting choice that I'd like to explore. In when you opened this up as a business, you brought on a brick and mortar location, which means you just gave yourself an overhead. above and beyond what you would have for your basement or a room in your house.
Yeah.
What went into that decision?
So it was kind of the facility decision. So just a little background. Bill and I were kind of in North Charlotte. In that area, the cost of living is high. Not extremely high, but it's high enough to where if you wanted any kind of space, you had to get creative. So Bill and I both Bill rented a house and I rented my apartment. And this is before we moved into the facility, but we were transitioning. So we had all the stuff in our apartment, so that was good, right? So we didn't really have an overhead. Mm-hmm. Once we decided on the facility, we were just talking about it. We had no idea that we were going to move into a facility, but we were looking for spaces, and this space came out of nowhere on Craigslist. And it was like 10,000 square feet, X dollars. And we were like, no way. It can't be that cheap. So we went to go look at it. And it was, it was cheap for a reason. So a little bit of work had to be put into it. But we were like, oh my God, 10,000 square feet. We jumped on it. The guy said, well, I have a guy coming on Saturday. This is on a Friday. He's like, he's going to look at this Saturday, and he's pretty sure he's going to make a decision. Now, was that true? I don't know. It was Friday. We talked it over. We signed it Friday night. It was done. So, basically, moving back into your question, we moved into the facility, and that was kind of our space. That was the overhead. The brick and mortar store is attached to it. It already came with it. So the front part of the facility is actually was offices, or what appeared to be kind of offices. It was sectioned off. Very, very low key there. But we were like, well, people always want to pick up orders. Yeah. So let's turn this into a store. And it's attached to the facility, so there's not really any extra. That's why I wanted the background. There's not really any extra overhead that comes with it.
Okay,
because it is attached to it, yes. And that's the only reason I can afford to have one on top of the online store.
Okay. And how is it going? What's the response to having that store?
So the store was launched in 2 parts. One, we launched it last year during COVID. Brilliant decision. I shut it down 2 months later because it just, we had this going. We were like, oh, gung-ho, it's the store. We're going to get it running. And this was before COVID happened, like in January. And we had planned it. We had bought everything. It was being constructed, and then COVID got really bad. And so we launched it in the summer just because we had already put a date out for people. So we didn't really want to retract on it because I don't like going back on my words. So, but didn't go so hot. But the second time it's been going good. So we relaunched it. We had a grand reopening, and that was just in July. And since then we've gotten a pretty positive response. But we're also kind of in the middle of nowhere. So it's more of a destination location. Okay. It's not on Central Ave in Charlotte, where people drive by and they're like, oh, wow, an exotic pet store. And they stop in. It's more like, Frog Daddy, already heard of them. I'm going to stop in. Yeah. So we aren't drawing that many new people. But it is definitely a hot spot. We get about 10 to 30 customers a week. So, that's decent for me, having the store as an online backbone, the online store. So, it's very doable.
Well, I do know that having a storefront is a dream for many people, and it's a dream for me as well. I just run the numbers every time and say I would need a strong internet backbone to pay for having a storefront, and so it doesn't look like having a storefront's a good idea, but you've made it work.
Yeah, unless I have seen some storefronts that are only storefronts, and there's one very local to me, and it does work. They do shows and they have their store, but their store is in the middle of Charlotte. It's on Central Ave, and they get a ton of walk-ins, and they're really good about like, hey, come to our store, constant, everywhere advertising. So I feel like it is doable, but it's also based on location. You've got to have the people, you got to have the foot traffic, or your advertising game is on point. Either way, you're going to have some money up front to get your name out there. So
yeah,
that's tough.
Well, what is a typical day look like for you as a dart frog breeder and store owner?
My days depend. It depends on what day it is. So, recently we've gotten more employees, so we're up to 3 true blue employees and 1 helper. That's not necessarily on the books, but they just that's my girlfriend. So, but she just comes in and helps out, and it's just like, okay, cool, great. But yeah, the typical day would be to basically animals always come first. So misting Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we do misting, feeding, and tadpole care and froglet care. So we have a lot of tanks. They're hooked up to Mist Kings. Luckily, half of them are, and the other half we have to hand mist. So misting takes about 45 minutes to an hour. There's a couple people tag teaming that. And then we feed. Feeding takes usually about 4 hours of time, and that's moving quick. So feeding takes a while. Making fruit flies, we make 250 fruit fly cultures a week. And then taking care of tadpoles, we take care of the tadpoles 3 times a week. That takes about an hour every time. Then I have my employee that does all the plants. So he will do propagations, maintenance, watering. That's an all-day task every day. He's actually my only full-time employee. But for me, it's mostly coordinating orders, talking to customers, coordinating shipments, getting all the information out to my employees, like, hey, we need XYZ for XYZ shipments, getting all the product, the packing slips ready to go for my packers. So that's kind of the daily thing. It's a lot of online orders. We ship out quite a bit of online orders a week, and we only ship Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So my Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays are horribly busy. It's mainly me running around, literally running all day long.
Okay.
Because packing orders takes such a long time.
Now, looking at your website, you have quite an impressive list of species of dart frogs and other frogs and actually other reptiles. What goes into deciding what species you're going to offer?
So this is something I'm not very good at. I am a chronic collector, and I have collector syndrome.
And don't we all?
Yeah, I was a Pokemon trainer all through my whole life. I was playing Pokemon, and literally it translated pretty hard. As soon as I got into dart frogs, I was like, oh my god, there's so many kinds, there's so many colors. There have been a lot of talks about scaling back, actually, offering less, but shifting the approach to what is making the most money. What is just sitting in the facility for 3 years and not doing anything. Because there are those animals, but I love them, and some of them are really rare. And some of these locales are very specific, and I may never get my hands on them again. So from a conservation standpoint, for me personally, I am still going to put in the work and put in the extra monetary investment to keep these guys going, because even if I'm not necessarily selling them and they're not making the company money, they are a part of the company. Because when people walk in, they see the breeding facility is all open to the public, and the hundreds and hundreds of tanks. So it's really cool to see the diversity. That's a big part of what makes us a cool company, I think. The fact that we have such a robust collection. But yeah, financially, yes, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And that's a struggle. That is a battle that we're currently fighting.
Well, you could always label them a marketing expense and say they're important for your social media outreach.
Exactly. That's basically what we do. That's basically exactly what we do. So it's good that you brought that up, because
yeah, and it's actually not too far. It's not really an exaggeration. That's the kind of thing that really gets attention on social media, and so
it does.
We as reptile amphibian people, when we want attention, it's those pictures that bring the people interest to our groups. So what are the biggest challenges in starting a breeding business? And this is the context of this question is, we have a number of people out there that love their reptiles, and that's really my audience there. Somebody who loves their reptiles, amphibians, and they're thinking, how can I make this a business? And so from your perspective, someone who's already done it, what were the biggest challenges in starting the breeding side of things and getting it to the point where you could say this is going to be a viable business?
It's a difficult question to answer. I think some of the biggest challenges I came across were just the work-life balance and the amount of time that it really took to first find the collection, find what you're interested in, because I feel like a lot of reptile people are scattered and they like all sorts of things. Well, I like all lizards, I like all frogs, and that's fine and that's good. And if you're not scattered, that's great, because at least you have a starting point. I would say it depends, because you don't have to be so targeted, but I would find your passion. Once you find the passion, it really is collecting, getting a solid source of breeding animals. That can be challenging depending on what you're trying to do. If you can do that and you're good at breeding them, which I would assume if you're passionate about it, it comes in hand. Mm-hmm. I would think the next hardest part is really getting yourself out there across all these other breeders. What makes you special? What makes your animals special? What makes them, genetically robust? What makes them, a brand? Building a brand is difficult. And I feel like a lot of the reptile companies that I see, at least at the shows, they don't really have a brand. They're just X, Y, and Z reptiles or X, Y, and Z exotics, and that's fine. But I think to really take it to the next step, you have to build a brand, like Frog Daddy, or Josh's Frogs built a brand. The name is okay, but he really pushed it. You have to push your brand and who you are, not just your animals. And so you have to develop this sense of, what is Frog Daddy? What do you do? What makes you special? Really focus on that. Focus on distinguishing yourself. And I think the biggest challenge was really, how am I going to do that? How do we brand frogs? How do we brand leaf litter? So that's one of the challenges. And the other challenge is really finding, making sure that you pick yourself back up again when you fall. Because I will say the business is brutal. It's very challenging. The money is there, but to get to it, it's a struggle. You have to be willing to push through, And honestly, it was hard work, passion, and branding that got us to what we were today.
Well, along that line of thinking, the branding you're talking, what does Frog Daddy stand for? What is the passion that drives it? What makes it special?
I think the first the backstory of why Frog Daddy is called what it is. It's basically a tribute to my father's lifetime of hard work. He would always say, "Who's your daddy?" And that seems like a very common phrase for a lot of us. But for me, it was something much greater. And he had this huge regret for not starting his own business. And he's not old. Doesn't mean he can't start one, but he's getting up there. And so I started this as a tribute to him. And so that's where Frog Daddy came from. And that's just the origin of the backstory. The second thing is having a good logo and a good color scheme and doing something different, with a little edge. Poison dart frogs, they're not the run-of-the-mill stuff. This is not your common average frog. And the cool part is they're pretty easy to keep. So it's not, a lot of kids, small children will come into the facility and will be so excited to see this beautiful, colorful frog. And I was that kid when I was 5, but I only saw it through National Geographic. There weren't any breeders that did this kind of stuff. So I feel like the whole company is structured on this experience that I really hope to push that experience in the coming years. Get an exhibit hall going. Inspire people for conservation. Look at these systems. We need to preserve these systems in their native, in their native ranges. So I think that that's kind of what Frog Daddy resembles. It resembles an experience of something that's a little different. And it's that edge. It's that strangeness. And I'm hoping that through the next few months and years, we can really push that kind of narrative and get, more people involved in the company and what we do and that kind of thing. So.
Okay. And as you've matured as a company, you're still a young company, but you have been around for long enough to have some maturing. Are you still finding that the most of the sales or the profit that supports the business comes from the dry goods?
So it's ironic, but a lot of our profit comes from the plants. The plant industry the horticultural industry has always been a very central part of people's lives, from having a lawn to having a terrarium. That's a new thing, but having landscaping has always been a thing. So people are familiar somewhat with plants. And I think last year, COVID just made people insane about plants. So a lot of people were stuck at home. They got involved. And I had worked in 2 greenhouses for about 8 years in the past. So I was actually a plant person before a frog person. And luckily, with poison dart frogs, you get to integrate both of these things.
Yes.
So we sell the system, we sell the set, we sell the kit. We say, you want this slice of rainforest? We can do it. We can make it happen. I can do it on $100 budget. I can do it on $1,000 budget. Doesn't matter to me. We've got things for everybody. So it's it's drawing the person in, and the kid, most of the time, the kid's just like, oh my God, this is so cool. And it is. And it's like, this isn't hard to do. You can have this too. And so that's kind of what supports the business. It's not the frogs, though. The frogs definitely help, but it's not the whole thing. So yeah, the dry goods, the plants, and the feeders, they help.
Okay. Now, say you're starting a business. Say from the perspective of somebody who is thinking about starting a business, and once they have everything together, they're somehow going to have to get their name out there. And so what has been successful for you as far as letting people know that you exist and interacting and building that customer fan base?
So there's 2 platforms that we use pretty much exclusively, and they're owned by the same company, and it's Facebook and Instagram. I think in-person shows also helped. So if you can get yourself into a thing like Repticon, or, there's a ton of different shows to get involved with. Look up some that are local to you. Get involved with the show. Say, hey, I'm a new company. I'm really looking for, my name to get out there. I have a lot of awesome animals that I really want to show people. Sell yourself. You have to sell yourself. And say, I would be honored to be at your show. Can I get in? And if you get in, then that's awesome. You have a chance to meet all these people. And from an online perspective on Facebook, join the groups. If there's not a group for your animal, make the group. That's even better, because now now you're the admin of the group. And people will come. I guarantee you. There's a ton of people that like flying geckos. There's a ton of people that like crested geckos. There's a ton of people that like Leachianus geckos and dart frogs. Some of the dart frog groups have like almost 20,000 individuals. Now, perspective based, that's not a lot of people, but for a niche hobby, it's at least a start, right? So get in those groups, get involved. Say, I'm a keeper. I'm here to learn. Let me share my experiences, share my pictures. Eventually, if you start researching, diving into, again, this is with your passion, diving into those things, culminating your knowledge and helping people, then, you help all these people. Eventually, they're going to buy stuff from you. Just by default. You don't even have to be pushy. Don't be pushy, in my opinion. I have this product. If you guys want to try it out, let me know. I'll send you free samples. Again, or I'll help you out. I'll do a giveaway. I've done 14 giveaways on Facebook alone. I don't know of another company that has done that in the dart frog industry. None of them. Okay. I love giving, and I think giving is also receiving. People see that and they're like, okay, that's something I can get behind. I love giveaways. Giving is a good thing. That's my love language. So it's find those groups. Promote yourself on Instagram. Take nice pictures. Really try for it. Look professional. Spell things correctly. Take time with your craft. It's funny, but all those little things make a difference and give you an edge. And over months and months of time, while you're building your website and building your brand, you're creating connections so that when you launch, you have customers or potential customers. So that's my advice for starting out.
Well, let's explore that a little bit more, because we in the reptile world, when we find a passion reptile, there's either one problem that it's so rare that we're starting our own Facebook group and we're trying to pull the number of people just to make a group together. And then there's the opposite problem, which you had with dart frogs, is that there's already an established community. There's already dart frog breeders all over the place. And so if somebody comes to one of these communities, they say they love crested geckos or they love dart frogs, they love something that has already established breeders firmly entrenched in the market, what would you say to them as far as what it would take to create a successful breeding operation or breeding business in that kind of a situation?
So if I'm understanding correctly, it's if these individuals are coming into a group that is already established and trying to, what makes Frog Daddy better than Josh's or different than Josh's? Yeah. Why
when you started off, there were already a lot of dart frog breeders around. How is it that you were able to establish a successful company in that kind of environment?
Customer service. That is it. That is all I did differently. I would put together the coolest, and I had some connections to get some cool plants, and I would put together the coolest plant packages. So you get a frog, well, I'm going to send you some cool stuff with it. Just all you have to do is just go one extra step, and all of a sudden that person that was ordering from X, Y, and Z is going to order with you now, because You care about them. You're making it personal. That is what matters. People thrive off of connection. They want personal connection. They want personalized attention. They want attention to detail. And it scares me because as I get bigger, I am having to start to delegate things. And that's always been one of my biggest fears, is getting too big too quick and losing the ability to tailor the customer experience, because that is what sets you apart as a newcomer. Is, hi, I'm going to spend an hour with this person who may or may not even buy anything from me. And that's what people have to understand, is that's the time constraint. That is you working 100 hours a week. That is the sacrifice that I was talking about. That's why. Because if you don't do that, you're not going to get the customer, because nobody knows who you are. So again, what makes you special? What makes you different? What can you offer to somebody that's not just like undercutting, the price by 50 cents? That's not what they're looking for. They're looking for the experience. So that's what I tried to culminate in 2017 and 2018, before I even really launched Frog Daddy as a company. I launched it in late 2018 in October. But in 2017, I had the preliminaries of my website up. Had 6 products on it. It was very small. It was the old website too. It was clunky. It was terrible. But people started giving me attention because I had already been breeding these animals for about 6 years. So I had some knowledge. I shared the knowledge. I shared my experience. People liked it. I had a collection. People were like, oh, that's a cool rack. That's a cool collection. And as that grew and as I culminated that, the personal connections grew. I became a name. I branded it. And now here we are. Anybody can do it. Anybody can do it if they are dedicated and they are personable and they care about these animals and they care about people. Because if you don't care about people, then you're screwed.
And what you just said is what makes our community strong. Somebody coming in and deciding they're going to start a business, and their business model is, I'm going to charge 50 cents less than everyone else.
Not going to work. Not going to work.
Price will always sell, but it's just not bringing anything to the community, and there's no spark there. And I've seen so many companies that's all about the price, and they can't understand why they aren't growing. And price is important, but that spark, that passion, is what really creates the business.
I found that the people are willing to. I've come across this a lot, and I just wanted to say this, not to cut you off.
Go ahead.
When I was growing as a young business, I'm still young, but back in probably 2018, 2019, people were willing to pay extra to me. And I told them, I'm like, I know my price. I just can't go lower than this. I'm too small. I can't afford to, I still can't. I can't afford to have free shipping on dry goods over $100 like Josh's does. I would sink, but people don't care. They want the experience and they want the personal connection. Wow, I can contact the owner of the company and he's going to fix my order, or he's going to throw in that stuff for me, or he's packing my order. It's the little touches. People actually really like that. And they will pay you an extra $5 for that peace of mind, for that personal touch. So I just wanted to highlight that on this podcast to people that are thinking about starting. Start it now, because you got to chase your dreams and you can do it. As long as you're adding that personal touch and that customer service, people will buy from you 100%.
Well, you're a couple of years in, depending on what point you take as your starting point, and you're working an enormous number of hours. And how do you feel about your decision?
It's, yeah, sometimes
I know that's a loaded question, but
yeah.
But just for the entrepreneurs who are thinking about doing it, what does it look like once you're there living the dream that you envisioned?
Yeah, so it kind of is, but there's always things, I always have this grand vision. And a lot of entrepreneurs, if not every entrepreneur, has a vision, right? That's what drives you to do. It's the intrinsic motivation. And most people are not in this industry, they're not intrinsically motivated by money, because that's not the case. You're intrinsically motivated by the animals, by the experience, by the collection, whatever it is. So I walk into my facility some days and I'm like, some days I breathe in and I breathe out and I'm like, wow, this is crazy. There's this culmination of effort and sacrifice and tears and joy and laughter. And then some days I want to burn it to the ground. I mean, honestly, like, it's funny, but it is hard. Once you get to the point where I am, at least for me, I mean, I was like hoping that I wasn't going to have to work this much still. But it's the same thing. You hire more people, but then your business grows. And then you're like, oh, I still got to work. I still got to do all this. But that's if you want to keep growing and again, keep the customer service. I mean, I could ignore all my emails. I could ignore all the Facebook messages. A lot of the people that I talk to aren't even buying from me. They're just asking questions about their dart frogs. But I'm still going to answer that. I'm still going to work because I am going to do that as long as possible. Because that's what made my company different. Again, and it's what's going to make the listeners' companies different, is that personal touch. So yeah, getting back to it, I don't regret it at all. I mean, I'm living my dream, but the dream has caveats. It's not a nightmare, but sometimes it's hard, and it's going to be hard. Yeah. And I'll go back to picking yourself back up again. Things die. I had 2 deaths in the last 2 months of some of my most expensive animals. Just drop dead. Proven pairs, and these are not things that you obtain easily, and there will be setbacks. There will always be setbacks. But you don't quit. As an entrepreneur, you just never quit. You're going to hear that from every motivational speaker you listen to, which I highly recommend that you guys start listening to motivational speeches. Get pumped up, because you have to be pumped up if you're going to own your own business, because nobody's going to be there pumping you up. It's going to be you. So,
well, what does your future look like? Well, what plans do you have? What drives you to go forward?
Oh man, I've got so many, and that's why I'm still here. I have so many visions and so many dreams on every scale. So like, the scale for the next year, my future is to finish the breeding facility. So we're going to move a few things. And then I'm going to buy the 300 plus 1824 enclosures that I still need. And we're going to have 455 1824s in that section of the breeding facility. And they're all going to be automated, and it's going to be open as an exhibit. That's my dream in the next year, and that's robust. That's going to be tough. Financially speaking, I am hopeful, but you have to be hopeful. I see it in my head. We're on the right path, and we just have to execute. And for the major future, in the next 5 years or so, I want to start tethering like-minded programs, starting an NGO with 2 of my friends down in Peru and Ecuador, and start conserving land, start pushing portions of my net sales to conservation, start practicing what I preach, start restoring habitat, old agricultural fields, rehabilitating rainforests. There's a lot of things I want to do. And the company has to have good roots for that, because if we're taking an extra 15% off the top, on top of the overhead, I have to make sure I can do that.
Yeah.
But it's important to, I have an obligation. That is why I set out to launch this company, is to give back and to do good things for these animals in their natural habitat before degradation takes its toll. Some of these animals are they're critically endangered. Some of the localities are only in 200 square meters of space, and that's all that species has. So we really have to start thinking about this as biodiversity declines. What are we going to do as bigger companies that sell these animals? What are we going to do for them? And that's just morality. You don't have to do that, but that's something I'm going to do. So that's deeper future. Really starting to work with like-minded individuals to launch campaigns to start tackling these environmental issues.
Well, Alex, I know I want to jump on a plane and go see your storefront, and so
that'd be awesome. I'd be honored to have you. It'd be great.
Yeah, yes, you do have a destination that's worth going and finding. Because I'd love to see that.
We'll get there. We'll get there. Next year is going to be. It's really going to be the spot. I'm trying. So.
All right. Well, I'm going to be getting over to the East Coast, and I want to stop by because I'd love to see the shop and the breeding facility. So,
for sure.
Alex, you have shared a great deal with us, and thank you very much for being open, honest. The listeners, me, we all need to hear how it really is, the good and the bad, and I really appreciate you bringing both and just laying it out for us.
Absolutely. It is my pleasure to do so.
Is there anything else you'd want to share with us?
Not much comes to mind, but I think this journey, if anybody is looking to tackle an online business, just do it. Take the dive. Take the jump. Do whatever it takes. If you are really passionate about it, you will make it work, and it will be something of pride, and it will be something amazing. So I really do think a lot of people are they're waiting for somebody to tell them to do it, and this is the person telling you to do it. So hopefully I can be an inspiration to you. If anybody wants to contact me, it's very easy. You just find me on Facebook, send me a message. I'll be happy to talk to you.
And folks, in the show notes, I'm going to have links to his website and his social media. And so we'll have all the ways to get a hold of Alex and explore what Frog Daddy is.
Awesome.
Alex, thank you very much, and we'll see you on the internet.
Awesome. Sounds great. Thank you.
Alex is only a couple of years into his business venture, and so it's very close to where many of us are. We're either starting a business or we're thinking about starting a business, and I hope you took away some insight from what he shared that can be applicable to your situation. And there's another insight I hope you took away. His interest in being part of conservation. And here's a very big reason why those of us in the community need to build businesses within this community, because it's us that's going to care. Yes, we need to make money. We can't eat passion. We need to support the roof over our heads. But once we take care of our basics, we in the community are much more likely to turn our eyes towards the conservation of reptiles and amphibians in the wild. And the reason why that is so important is because reptiles and amphibians often are not the focus of conservation efforts. Usually it's for the larger animals that resonate more with the public. So it's really up to us in the community to step up to the plate and take that place and look out for the reptiles and amphibians in the wild. And one way we do that is by building a business within this community, spreading awareness of the need for conservation, And we in the reptile amphibian community, we will do that. Thank you very much for joining Alex and me here today. If you'd like to learn more about Frog Daddy, go ahead and take a look at the links in the comments section. His website is a great place to browse. My name is Bill Strand. It's time for me to sign off. Take care of yourself, take care of our reptile community, and let's see what we can build.